Chief of Staff. I've served as 29 years as Chief of Staff to Congressman Oberstar, who was Congressman DeFazio's predecessor as Chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I moved to Oregon in, 6 years ago to be with grandkids. And the governor was kind enough to appoint me to serve on OBPAC. I'm especially interested in serving the interests of seniors, as I'm 75 years old, who are bikers and interested in biking. And 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So that is an additional item for me to represent on OBPAC. That's seniors with health issues and disabilities who need to be encouraged to bicycle to keep their health. Thank you. And who goes next?
So it's Lauren. Good to see you, Lauren. Welcome. We're just doing introductions. And for those of you watching the recording, this is the Oregon Bike Ped Advisory Committee meeting, July 2022.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late, and I'm glad to see Beth and Andre on here. So Lauren Morris, and I'm the Mobility Program Coordinator for the Coquille Indian Tribe in Coos Bay, Oregon. And I did my homework. I actually went to Portland last week or the week before, and I went by the bridge because I knew I probably wouldn't be able to ride my bicycle there. So I went on both sides and I went underneath and I got real familiar with the bridge. And most of you guys didn't get to see it, but it's very cool. So go check out the bridge. Anything else I'm supposed to throw in there?
I think that's all. Thank you for doing your homework and checking out the bridge for all of us, since we didn't get to go on the tour tomorrow. Let's pass it over to Andre next. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Andre Lightsey Walker. I use he, him pronouns. And I am pending governor confirmation, the at-large member for OBPAC. So excited to be here with you all. A little bit about myself. I'm a fourth generation Portlander. 3 of those generations still live in the city with me. And so just fascinated by the way people get around and want to support and make sure people have options across the state. So happy to be here. Oh, and in my daytime job, I'm the policy manager at the Street Trust, which is a nonprofit that focuses on multimodal advocacy. So appreciate you all. Thanks so much.
I'm excited to have you here. Thanks so much for that intro, Andre. I know we've connected a few times and I'm really excited to get to collaborate more. Beth.
There it is. Hello, everybody. I'm honored to be here. Go really brief. I'm an older than average. I was an older than average master's student in community planning when I started a few years back. This is my first job as a city planner, City of Newport. I am the planner liaison. I think there is one or yeah, okay. I'm also the staff liaison to our Bike Ped Advisory Committee here in Newport. And I've been a lifelong bicycle enthusiast and always tried to get work so that it would, so I could bike to work. And I did my homework as well yesterday. I went to Newport anyway because I had planned to see my daughter over the weekend, which I did. And I also met with a great guy who some of you probably know. I'm just not, where did I put his name? But I got to see all the Better NATO results of that whole project, and we talked about community building and doing pop-up stuff for streets and stuff. So it was really fascinating to me, and just Portland is so far ahead of everything, and especially my town, that I just love going to Portland every time. I learn so much. That's me.
Well, welcome, Beth. Thanks so
Thank you.
much. I just want to take a moment to celebrate. We have full committee membership for this meeting. We're missing Mavis Hartz right now, but there's been kind of recruitment throughout the pandemic, and I think it's been a little bit challenging over the last couple of years. So in this moment, we are a full committee, 8-person committee, and I'm just appreciating that fact. I realize I skipped over myself, so I'm Emma Newman. I am the interim chair. Hal resigned at the last meeting, and so as vice chair, I am facilitating this meeting, and then we'll be electing new leadership at our next meeting. I have been the City of Springfield Senior Transportation Planner for the last 7 years. I'm actually leaving that job on Monday next week, so I'm almost done with that. But I will be continuing on with OBPAC because walking and biking and kind of human-oriented design and infrastructure really is near and dear to my heart and something that I enjoy working on. So look forward to continuing this work with all of you. Thanks to Susan. If you have seen her chat message, if you're on and would like to introduce yourself in the chat, if you're not a committee member, feel free to drop your name, any preferred pronouns, and your affiliation with anything. If you'd like to share kind of what area of the state you're coming from, or if you have a role that you'd like to share there. With that, we will move on to public comment. So are there any community members who would like to provide comment to OBPAC today? If so, please either indicate in the chat box or raise your virtual hand, which would be under reactions with Zoom raise hand feature.
Is that what I'm supposed to do?
Yes. Would you like to speak to us? Yep, you got it. Thumbs up. So Lynn.
Okay. Okay, my name is Lynn.
Introduce yourself and then share whatever comment you have to share with the committee. Susan, do we have that intro text of kind of the operating agreements for 3 minutes? Oh, okay, you're muted, but I got the 3 minutes. Sign language.
3 minutes. We like to keep the public testimony to 3 minutes if possible. And then it's chair discretion on whether or not people want to have follow-up questions or anything.
Great, thank you. I think we have a little blurb, but we'll find that for our next meeting. Lynn, go ahead and introduce yourself and love to hear from you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm glad this committee exists. I'm Lynn Larson. I live in Corvallis. I'm a member of a group called Preservation Works. I'm the secretary. I wanted to make you aware, if you weren't aware, of a project ODOT is working on in Corvallis. They're replacing the historic Van Buren Bridge with a new bridge in the same position as the old bridge. And we want to repurpose the old bridge, which is a swing span truss bridge, as a bike ped facility. We even commissioned Smith Monroe Gray engineers out of Beaverton, who did a relocation study. They have, it's called sliding, and they have slid several bridges, so they know their stuff, and they have shown that it is possible to do this. ODOT has decided unilaterally that they don't want to own this bridge. It's a very long story, complicated, but up until October 2017, the bridge was still in their original plan to be repurposed. If we repurpose the historic bridge as a bike ped facility across the river, it would connect downtown Corvallis to the Orleans natural area on the other side of the river. It would connect the bike path that's on the other side of the river on Highway 34. It would provide a quiet way to cross the river. It would provide for a much less steep approach for ADA folks and elderly folks. It would fulfill ODOT's mission of encouraging bike ped facilities. Portland, Eugene, and Salem all have walking bridges, and people love them. If we don't save this historic bridge, and it is on the National Historic Register, we're really missing a golden opportunity that will not come again. So it seems to fit your mission too, as far as advocating for bike ped facilities. And I did submit some comments ahead of time. I emailed in some comments. So That's it. I just wanted to raise your awareness and hope that you would advocate for saving this bridge and repurposing it.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate your comments. I know that I've received that in our packet before, the written materials, and if there's newer ones, we'll be receiving those soon from staff. For new committee members, we do have at the end of our agendas an opportunity to do any follow-up on public comment that we'd like to. So Lynn, thank you so much for coming and sharing that for our awareness today at our meeting.
Should I stick around?
If you'd like to, you're welcome to attend the rest of our meeting, but there's no need to if you have other things to do.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Sounds good. So Susan will get those materials out as soon as possible. Anyone else who would like to provide comment, please raise a virtual hand, indicate in the chat box, or you can come off mute and let me know verbally. Okay, not seeing or hearing any. We will move along with the agenda. So our next item is membership motivations. And so we started to talk about this a little bit before, but especially since we have new members, this will act as a bit of a primer for our conversation with updating our work plan at our next meeting. So just take a moment to reflect individually on these two questions. What motivates you to serve on OBPAC? And what is one thing you are excited to help accomplish as part of the committee? We'll just take a couple minutes to personally reflect, and then we'll do a roundtable. Okay. For this one, I'm going to go roughly the opposite order if I can remember from what we did for intros. So let's go ahead and start with Beth, and then we'll go to Andre second.
Well, me first. What motivates me to serve is the two-way street. I have educated myself a whole lot in bike ped issues in infrastructure, and I'm very excited about what other cities are doing. So I feel that I could use that knowledge to, help the group make good decisions, or at least have my decisions be informed decisions. The other way is that I want to learn from you guys, and also what OBPAC means and could mean to smaller towns like Newport. I am the kind of a staff representative, not a general person. I'm not saying that right, but because I work for a city, I want to help other small cities to learn how to either create a bike ped advisory committee of their own, or to work with activists in the community. And also just have city staff and community members realize that bike ped amenities are not zero-sum mentality. They don't take away from other parts of the city or the community. So what I would like to see accomplished is maybe materials, physical handout type things, or something on the website that would help existing bicycle ped advisory committees be more effective in their communities. I'm finding that my bike ped advisory committee is just kind of, we listen to complaints from the community and then it doesn't go anywhere. We don't feel that we have a lot of power and to make change. So that's kind of my goal.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. And the reason that I offered for you and Andre to go first is at the end of this round, if something is burning in your mind that you've heard from others that piques your interest, you'll get to speak a second time, since you might be inspired by existing committee members who have been on for a little bit longer. So Andre.
Great, thanks so much. I say my motivation is really grounded in the people of the state. I am here because other folks aren't able to be. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing the stories and voices of people that don't have the privilege to sit at tables like this. And I am hopeful about a future where we really do have a suite of amazing transportation options for folks, and they don't have to hop in a car to get where they need to be. When I'm thinking about things I'm excited to help accomplish, I think one thing is specifically regarding the Oregon Transportation Commission and sort of encouraging them to shift away from an auto-centric framework and really elevating bicycle and pedestrian transportation in policy and funding as well.
Good stuff. Thank you. We'll go to Lauren and then Bill. And Lauren, you're muted. Love to hear what you're saying.
When I first got onto this committee, I was completely lost. It's some of them. But as I've progressed, I do understand what this committee is about, and I'm pretty excited about that. I was talking to my regional representative for ODOT for the mobility program, and she reminded me that she recommended me for this committee because I speak up and I ask questions. I was like, okay, well, that's what they need. That's great. But what's keeping me here is learning about and exploring the different modes of transportation besides public transportation and vehicles or anything that puts emissions out into the atmosphere. Let's see. So that's kind of what motivates me. Like it did, having done those ACT interviews, also, I like to support those smaller communities and make them feel like they're heard and that they're worth listening to. Thank you for putting that. I always forget what that means. Because we need that. I mean, especially living in a rural area, sometimes we feel like we're not being heard and that our areas are too small to have anything significant done. And so I really appreciate being able to be a part of helping those people feel heard and to motivate them to also move forward. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, as I said in my introduction, I served for 29 years on the staff of Congressman Oberstar, 9 of them in Minnesota, 20 of them in Washington, D.C. And all those 29 years I biked to work. And my inspiration to do that was Congressman Oberstar, who was really the predecessor of Peter DeFazio and Earl Blumenauer in being national bike leaders. So this is an opportunity to continue that legacy. And I especially want to be a voice for senior bikers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Erin?
Yeah, one of my just greatest motivations to serve on the committee is definitely just the opportunity to create a safer and more equitable transportation network in Oregon. I really believe that you should feel safe while walking and biking in the state. So everything that we kind of do on this committee is kind of leaning towards that and trying to just make it an option for people around the state, not just to get them out of their cars, but because sometimes walking and biking is a necessity in some communities because they don't have access to a car. So kind of those things are the things that really motivate me on the committee. And one thing I'm excited to accomplish, it's just providing funding for new projects around the state. We're tasked with the difficult task of having a limited amount of funds and trying to disperse them as equitable and as efficient as we can. And I know it's a tough job, but I really enjoy that part of the committee and all the diverse perspectives that go into those decisions. And I like providing my own thoughts and of course being valued on the committee as well.
I'm so glad you're here. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Robert?
Thanks. So I mentioned that in my day job, I work for the Metro Regional Government in the Parks and Nature Department, and I'm the Regional Trails Planner. And I've been doing that for 15 years. And kind of the 10-second version of what that job is that we have a 1,000 mile, a vision of a 1,000 mile interconnected network of off-street biking and walking facilities for people to attend to their daily needs, get where they need to go, or just get outside and enjoy nature away from car traffic, so on bike or on foot. And over the years of doing that job, there's of course a lot of successes, but a lot of challenges and frustrations too. And I noticed pretty quickly that quite often the challenges and frustrations involved ODOT. And so I was curious about that. I wanted to be proactive in figuring out a way to come up with solutions to address some of those challenges. And I thought that getting to know ODOT a little bit better through the work of this committee could help me to be more successful in delivering that interconnected bike network, off-street trail network. Because these off-street trails, these are the low stress network. These are truly like the 8 to 80 facilities. These are because they're totally separate from cars. So these are where everyone feels comfortable being on a bike or being on foot, and extremely safe facilities. So anything that I can do to keep reaching that vision is really important for the work of this committee and for the Portland Metro region and for the state. So that is my motivation. I think that, so something else in terms of like what I hope to accomplish, I noticed over the past year or two that really just within the span of like less than 2 years, I went from being one of the junior members on this committee to now being the longest serving member on this committee. We had a wave of of resignations and term limited departures. And so I really wanted to be involved in the recruitment process and bringing in really good people to continue the really important work. And Aaron was involved in the 4 recruitments as well that resulted in Lauren and Bill and Beth and Andre. And it's just such a great feeling. It's really gratifying to have you all here now. So with my remaining time on the committee, I just hope to be, as the kind of longest serving member, I just hope to do whatever I can to help you all be successful and achieve what you want to achieve out of this committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. I know I look to you as someone who's been on the committee longer than me, and so you have that longer duration perspective, and it's been really, really helpful to talk with you at times about specific topics. So thank you for that. In reflecting about kind of why I am on this committee, I just, as I said earlier, have a passion for changing the built environment, and specifically to help promote health both down at the individual level, but also the community scale and globally. So we're thinking about, carbon emissions is kind of the global impact, but at the individual level, just, I think last night I was talking with my partner about how on his bike ride home, he ran into a friend of ours who works at the e-bike shop across town. They rode together for a few moments. They checked in on how his kid was doing. And there's just that opportunity for the interpersonal connections at the human scale, brief moments where you don't have to schedule a time to go hang out with a friend or someone you know in the community, and just briefly pass right along together or walk along together for a little bit and have that wonderful interaction that builds social strength within our communities, but also as people being out healthy, active, and just connecting and supporting one another at that human scale. So that is, I think, a vision that is well reflected in the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. One of the outcomes that I would love to see is really building the state network for people working on and passionate about implementing that vision. So we've done some of the initial outreach to the the Area Commission on Transportation, kind of active transportation positions, so bike ped specific positions, transit oriented positions. I think the next phase is really, excuse me one second. The next phase is what Beth was saying early on. How do we connect with the local committees, the bike ped advisory committees, the active transportation committees, transportation advisory committees? They have a lot of different names, but people working at that more local and regional level on the same types of topics so that we can affect more of a shift in power at the state level to produce the results more effectively that are in the adopted vision from the bike ped plan. That's lasting policy change. It's also funding changes, which a number of you talked about as well. So that's really my driving factor and what I hope to see happening in the near future. As I said, I'll go back to Beth, since you were so courageous and started us off. If there's anything really piquing your interest from this roundtable that you'd like to add as an addition, and then Andre will ask the same of you.
Not much, except for I didn't sound very humble when I'm saying I'm going to share my knowledge. So I want to say it's only because I've had such an interest all my life in this that that I feel I can make good decisions. Not that you guys know so much about all this stuff, and I really am going to learn a lot from you. And in discussions, I really want to hear other people's opinions. I hope that we feel strong enough to, if we hear something that doesn't sound quite right to us or doesn't work in with our personal experiences, that we will share that so that we all can make good decisions. That's all.
I agree 100%, and please bring that item forward at our next meeting when we're talking about our group operating agreement. I think that's one of the strengths of a strong group, is having the support to really speak up, especially when you're in the minority and you have a diverging viewpoint to bring that forward with the committee. So thank you for raising that. And you do have professional training and expertise. We're all bringing our own lived experience, our own knowledge set. And so please contribute what you know. And if you have disagreements, we'll have good conflict and discussion around that. Andre.
Yes, I think the thing I would just add is how excited I am to work with you all. There's such a diverse group of folks and knowledge and backgrounds. And so excited to sort of be a part of that and just continue to grow professionally and as an individual with you all. So really looking forward to future conversations.
Great. Such a positive note to wrap this kind of motivation item up on. It is not the end of this. We'll be building upon this next meeting to really kind of reflect on what we shared here and then continue the conversation, and that will start informing the work program update. So I asked staff to make sure to take detailed notes on this section, probably start with a summary next time and keep building on it. And between this meeting and next meeting, you can individually be thinking, okay, what did I hear? What were the commonalities among the group? Are there things that additionally piqued my interest that I haven't brought forward yet that I'd like to share? Just keep this percolating in the meantime. Anyone else have any last comments or thoughts on this motivations agenda item before we get into the committee business? Okay, well, I know I'm feeling inspired, so thank you. We do not have draft minutes, so we're going to skip over that item and address the minutes from our last meeting at our next meeting. The discussion question that we want to start off with here is to talk about what we would each like to get out of the committee equity discussion. So Robert and I had met with staff. We have some support from CAS and also the equity office. I believe the new director of equity from ODOT is coming to our meeting to introduce herself later on in our meeting. And so since we are delaying this kind of working agenda item to the next meeting, we have this opportunity to have a brief check-in on is there anything specific that we would like to get out of that discussion as a group when we have it at our next meeting. Let's just do raise of hands, no specific order. Robert.
Thanks. I just thought it might be helpful to share what some of us have already talked about that we want to get out of it, which is the first thing that comes to mind for me. I think the main thing is making sure that these meetings are a space where everyone feels safe and doesn't feel like they're subjected to, you know, any kind of humiliation or certainly anything related to racism or white supremacy, like microaggressions or even macroaggressions. And if anything like that does happen, making sure that we know that the systems are in place that it can be addressed in an appropriate way. We can point to some specific instances where we all could have done better, and so we want to learn from those and make sure that we are going to do better going forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Glad you framed it up. I know one thing that I am hoping to get out of that conversation when we have it is to reflect on Hal's resignation letter. She left us with a lot of great points on her insights into how to affect change within the organization, change just internally within our committee as well. And so I know that I'm going to be rereading that prior to having our conversation. Has everyone on the committee received a copy of that at this point?
Could you resend it in an email to me at
Happy to.
least?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that can be a part of the conversation as well that I would like to make sure to reflect on and learn from. So that we change our ways going forward, but also keep the good stuff. Anyone else have responses to this question of what you would like to get out of the committee's equity discussion? Or any concerns, things that you'd like to make sure are not present in that conversation? I guess that's kind of the flip side of it. Is there anything that you're kind of like feeling on edge or concerned about that you're like, we'd really like to not, whatever it is?
For me personally, I'd love to like hear examples of like situations where like the question of equity is like brought up. Just because like I feel like I haven't, maybe I have gone through those situations, but in the moment I didn't really realize that I was in one of those situations. So just a little more clarity on the type of situations we'd be put in, especially on the committee specifically, just so we can almost like have an eye out for it instead of, you know, maybe just dismissing it as something that usually happens.
Thanks, Erin. I think that will be really helpful. And I know a number of those experiences that have been my time on the committee were before you and most of the other committee members were on the committee, or there's been things that haven't happened in the committee meetings specifically, but have been more global within the ODOT agency. So I appreciate that desire. I'll bring that forward. What else?
I was just talking to a coworker about something similar to this and recognizing how fast-paced things are in our world right now, and our choice of words and actions around equity and racism. And I know I'm not fully caught up, but I wonder if it would be helpful to have somebody who is be a moderator when we talk about that. Even if it's within our own group, our own committee, so we can be educated. I know I'm not fully educated. I think I am. I think I know. But clearly I don't. So, you know, it's my fault.
Thank you. And I know that we do have support from the Office of Equity. We have some experts who work in this realm, so I think that will be a great resource to tie into the conversation. I know I have a lot to continue learning, so I think that kind of beginner's mind is helpful. We all have our own lived experiences, but there's always more. Robert?
I think that one of the kind of inherent challenges about doing equity work with ODOT, or at least that I've experienced over the past, you know, however many years working with this committee, has to do with what I've noticed a pattern where there's this mindset, or at least this feeling that I've heard expressed from members of the committee from the less populated parts of the state, where the implication, or sometimes it's more explicit, is that there aren't people of color in this part of the state, and therefore why are we doing this, or why is this important, or this isn't relevant to me, this is a Willamette Valley thing or a Portland thing. And it's really kind of, so I've heard that several times in and I also hear it from in different ways, not always in those same terms, from in the way that ODOT staff talk about equity. And I think it's just because that's maybe a reflection of how this decision-making and politics happen at the state level. But I think it's really in opposition of what it means to advance racial equity at a statewide level. So I guess I don't know what the solution is going to be, but I just wanted to highlight that as one of the inherent challenges that I've noticed.
Andre?
Thank you. I did just have sort of a aha moment. Maybe aha is not the proper word, but I'm not sure what the conversation is going to be totally about when we get to that time. And so that's something, as a new member, I think I'm just sort of, I'm lacking some context. But I will say, as a professional in this realm, I'm a little challenged because I'm reflecting back to 2017 when I had just graduated University of Oregon and I moved back to Portland. And I was interning at Metro. And my very first meeting there was a meeting where people on the planning staff were talking about equity. And so I'm having this little moment where I'm flash forwarding 5 years and I'm entering a new space, and there's a group of folks that are talking about equity, right? And so I'm trying to understand what that means for me personally, about whether or not there's, that's half a decade at this point. Like, where are we in that journey? And so I'm just drawing parallels, and I don't know if I'm necessarily contributing anything. I just want to sort of share how I'm experiencing this moment with you all. And so whatever that offers you, or, happy to be here, but yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I feel like we have some good things that have already been shared. I've been taking some notes. Anything else that hasn't been raised yet that we would like to have as part of the equity discussion at our next meeting? Yeah.
Is the equity discussion going to include sexism, misogyny, or kind of ignoring the needs of women in general at all stages in their lives? Or is it going to be mostly based on ethnicity? Or
Well, you're pointing out great power dynamics that are at play in a number of different kind of identities. All of that relates to our work in creating a state that works for all Oregonians. And so I think those are important items to be bringing forward, bringing into the conversation. I don't have a complete answer because I don't have the details of exactly what it's going to look like. That's why we're asking this question for input. But I know that that's a really important item just locally in my community, hearing from, female presenting individuals on our regional path, and not having lighting in a certain location makes it so that they don't feel comfortable navigating certain pieces of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, myself included, in some spots during some seasons of the year. So that very much relates to our work, and I hope that you'll continue to bring this forward as you see it able to integrate into conversations, or if it's lacking from the conversation, please speak up and make sure that we're thinking with that perspective as well.
oh, I will.
Great, love it. Robert.
I think reading Hal's letter will help explain some of the context for where this conversation is coming from. It's a topic that it's kind of, it's something that we've brought to our committee in the past, but then in Hal's letter, she'll talk about one of the, so I'll just tell you. So we had an equity trainer at one point, and it did not go well because it was frankly just the trainer was really bad, and it was a bad training. And I mean, she was basically defending some white supremacy behavior, and she was actually perpetrating some some harmful actions as well. And so it was such a painful experience that I don't think anyone really wanted to address it. But meanwhile, harm had been done and no one had tended to the harm that had been done. So it festered for a long time. And I think the only reason, I'm speaking frankly here, I hate to say it, but I think that the only reason that we're now taking it seriously again is because our chair resigned over it. I think that if she hadn't have taken that drastic step, I think it still would have been swept under the rug. That's just my kind of cynical but candid take on it. Just because I don't want you all, I mean, Beth and Andre, this is your first meeting and I don't want you to feel like we're being coy or like not telling you the full story or having to wonder like what's actually going on here. Like, at least from my perspective, that's the full story. Like, that's the context. That's why this is happening. And I am cynical about it because I'm not a person of color. So the harm that was done to me was different, and it wasn't a form of racism, but I was also harmed, and as like a white man, I experienced harm as well. So that's partly where my cynicism comes from.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'll just share one more example, kind of to Erin's point of what are we talking about here historically. So there was an individual who was speaking up and providing public comment to the committee and using terms that were disparaging to certain groups and inflammatory. So we as a committee kind of how and our former chair really kind of called it into question in the meeting, but there were opportunities to intervene previously. We then wanted to develop, an explanation, which I was kind of looking for at the beginning of this meeting, of what is our introduction for public comment to set expectations that we will not tolerate speech of certain kinds that is not okay. And so that's another area where we as a committee are inviting people forward to speak. But if they're providing comments that are inappropriate, we need to be having some sort of proactive response to that and not just kind of letting it slide or not following up until a few months later. Like, we need to be clear on what are our processes and our agreement as a group so that if those moments happen, we know how to respond and we're empowered to do so. I know when I was in the training, I think it was my very first meeting or very close to it, that Robert was referencing. And so the start of the training, I was pretty new to the committee and was witnessing some of the microaggressions, but wasn't sure, like, is this now going to be folded into the training and be part of the, like, well, don't do that. But then we never looped back to it, but I didn't speak up. So now to this day, I feel kind of awful being like, well, why didn't I speak up as an ally? I didn't know how very well at that point. But that's the context. So like, I want to make sure that we're setting a foundation to be an empowered committee, both collectively, but as individuals, so that we're stronger in those moments that kind of question our ethics and our morals. And are we there? Do we have each other's back in those moments that we're not proud of, but we can learn from them? Lauren?
I don't know if maybe Susan can help us with this, but with the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, equity, beginning with race, is a big issue that we're working on. And it seemed to me like that came from ODOT. It's not just within the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, that it's something that ODOT is looking at. And it is specifically beginning with race because that affects many different areas, including employment, neighborhoods, all kinds of different areas, schools, and that kind of thing. So this is a big topic, and I don't know what happened here in this group historically, or if this is just specific to this group that we're addressing this, but it's not the only place that it's being talked about. And people do keep interjecting at the Safe Routes advisory committees, you know, about other inequality or inequity among other groups of people. Because it's there, but they specifically wanted to start with race.
Susan or Karen, do you want to share about this now, or do you want to loop that into the conversation next time?
I was just going to elaborate a little bit on context with the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, because I think that's always helpful. So in the Public Transportation Division, we manage a number of advisory committees, including OBPAC and the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee being one of them. The impetus, I'd say, in that committee in terms of a lot of the equity discussions stemmed from the fact that that committee is a decision or a recommendation body for the Safe Routes to School infrastructure funding and non-infrastructure funding. And so as that group was going through kind of what are priority criteria to judge and assess projects, racial equity like rose to the highest kind of level there. And then it really snowballed into a really important discussion on what that integration looks like. And it became really clear that there are some foundational pieces among the committee that need to be developed around equity. And so what I'm trying to say is that like the advisory committees can learn from each other. And as Lauren noted, or Lauren, I don't know if you noted, but Anita Yap was at the last meeting helping facilitate some discussions around racial equity with the committee. And so we're just doing our best to support each committee in their journey, recognizing that each committee has different explicit needs at different times. So we're doing our best to ensure that there's a meaningful conversation. And as Emma said, Erica, our new director of the Office of Social Equity, will be joining us this afternoon to introduce herself as well. So just a little context.
Doing a time check and realizing we probably want to move along to our other action items soon. Any last thoughts on what we'd like to see in the equity discussion? I appreciate even just having this conversation and sharing a few examples here to start painting the context of where have we been as a committee? How do we hope to do better in the future? What questions are in the space that we'd like to get clear on? Okay. Seeing none, I'm gonna keep us moving along. So the work plan is linked in the agenda, and we'll be doing a refresh pretty soon. I'm wondering, looking to Beth and Andre, have you had the work plan shared with you? What level of familiarity do you have, or would it be helpful to maybe meet in between this meeting and next meeting to kind of orient to what our existing work plan is so that you're more prepared for the update to the work plan next time?
I vote for the second thing you said.
Orient?
Yes, for me.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on my list. Thank you for that feedback. Well, a few items that relate to our work plan. So this section of the agenda, the legislative policy adoption, funding, organizational health, and outreach, those reflect the areas of our work plan. So that's on our agenda here. And then we have a few action items under those areas today. So the first item is just an announcement with a link to the letter that was submitted from OBPAC to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Their commission, the Lands Conservation and Development Commission, met last Thursday. So this was a written comment that was submitted prior to their comment deadline of July 1st, specifically commenting on the bicycle and pedestrian system inventory requirements for transportation planning in metropolitan areas. They met on July 21st, approved the permanent rules. And so this is just an FYI as to the comments we submitted as a committee before today's meeting, since our last meeting, for our committee direction. The next letter is to approve the Mobility Advisory Committee letter. They can go ahead and pull that up. I met with the Mobility Advisory Committee, kind of OBPAC working group. So OBPAC appointed a bicycle and a pedestrian representative to ODOT's Mobility Advisory Committee. That committee reviews ORS 366215 routes, which that sounds like a whole lot of jargon, but essentially it's the hole in the air Oregon revised statute that says freight trucks need to get through different areas. We need to balance different needs on our transportation system. So that committee is reviewing projects that are coming forward for a number of years, even though it was in the statute, there was not bicycle and pedestrian representation regularly. So OBPAC participated in the development of a charter document for the MAC, the Mobility Advisory Committee. We appointed Bob Jundeff as the pedestrian representative and Nick Meltzer as the bicycle representative on the Mobility Advisory Committee. Maybe I think it's over probably about a year ago now. It's been a while. And so they've been attending the meetings and participating in the conversations. We convened and said it's time to kind of elevate this, and in response to Director Strickler's visit at our last meeting, share some of the experiences and concerns that we continue to have with that committee. The top two being that the committee is holding up important projects and kind of standing in the way of efficient delivery of projects that would benefit biking, walking, safety, good street design in accordance with current policies. And then the decision-making process and authority continues to remain unclear. So we have more extensive comments on that. The requests would be to consult OBPAC on any policy changes that would remove or minimize bicycle, pedestrian, and safety-related elements, such as lane widths, which is a common topic of discussion, and roundabouts, which often gets a lot of discussion at that committee as well. And the second piece would be to have OBPAC leadership meet with the ODOT executive leadership team member, staff representatives from public transportation and mobility divisions, and the MAC bike and PED representatives to discuss how can we achieve the stated goals from the Secretary of State's audit, which led to the charter development and a number of different changes, and make the MAC process and procedures clear, effective, and efficient. And so you have the full letter, but that is the kind of overview of what this is, a step in an ongoing process to try to improve policy kind of practices in our state and serve our community well, and make sure that there's not one specific stakeholder group that is kind of in a seat of power and influencing decision-making beyond what the actual stated authority is. Any questions, revisions, both trying to provide context as well as move this item along. So let's take first any clarification, contextual questions, if there are any. Not seeing any. Any thoughts on the letter itself?
I guess I would have one question, just like timeline. Like when would these requests be considered, or just making sure it doesn't just get shoved away somewhere or swept under the rug? Just some timeline.
Thank you. My intention would be to submit it within the next week. And then if we don't hear anything within like a month or at most by our next meeting, then follow up and say, hey, we sent you that communication. Where are things at? Bill?
I thought it was an excellent letter, laid out in a mature and straightforward way, some pretty difficult questions.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions, concerns? Probably be hearing more on this item in future meetings, so just know that it's going to be continuing discussion item since we've been working on it for at least 1.5 years, and it's a big one. With that, unless there's anything else, I'm not seeing anything. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this letter and submit it. Bill,
So move.
do you have a second?
Second.
Second from Robert, thank you. So I think all the committee members who are officially on the committee per the governor are allowed to vote at this point, but everyone's participating in discussion. So I think if you haven't been approved by the governor yet, you'll refrain from voting in this meeting, but we appreciate your participation and soon you'll be voting with us. So all in favor, please say aye and or raise your hand. Great. Okay, any opposed? Abstention? I think we have unanimous approval of the MAC letter as presented. So the next item is the funding, the area of our work plan, and approving the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, Oregon Transportation Commission thank you letter. And the context for this is trying to give some positive reinforcement and inspire more direction in the direction of more funding for bike ped safety, et cetera. So Aaron, do you want to give an introduction to this item?
Yeah, hopefully you'll have a little bit of a background on IIJ funding. It's just a pot of funding that the state of Oregon received to invest in infrastructure, and the OTC had discretion on where those funds were allocated. And they decided to allocate 90 million of the funding to public and active transportation. So the committee just wanted to thank them for their commitment to just increasing transportation options. So I drafted a letter just kind of outlining the things we were thankful for, but also mentioning that we just want to continue to see these investments in these transportation options, and hopefully it'll be continued into the future. So hopefully y'all had a chance to review it. If not, there's the link to the letter in the drive.
Thanks, and Susan also just shared the link in the chat as well. It's on our agenda. I'm seeing the safety for all modes highlighted.
Yes, I think you mentioned that you wanted to discuss as a committee if we should leave that in there, just as far as like outreach. I don't know, you mentioned that you didn't think that safety was always emphasized, so I wanted to bring it up and see if others had thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I was reading this sentence and trying to differentiate between, is this trying to say that the outreach received across the state continue to emphasize safety, or was OTC prioritizing safety in their funding decisions? I feel like safety continues to lack the funding emphasis that is needed, especially as pedestrian fatalities are increasing at a pretty dramatic rate across the state. But reading it now, I could read it as just like there's broad support across the state. It's not necessarily the OTC piece of it.
Yeah, I think that was kind of what I had intention, that the public outreach that ODOT did just showed a lot of support for increasing safety for all nodes in the state of Oregon.
Okay. And I commented the next sentence, the 150 years to complete walkways and bikeways. Can you just remind me, based on my comment, of was that updated since this last decision, or?
Yeah, I got that talking point from Jessica, but the way I understood it is that pre-IIJ funding it would take 150 years. So I don't know if there's a better way to clarify that.
Maybe just stating that, you know, the funding level prior to IIJA. I don't know to what extent the, you know, the funding that was approved would shift that. Susan, do you have any updated information on how I might? inform-
I think the 150 years was a calculation. It's a couple years old, and as you guys are aware, the inflationary pressure along, you know, there's just so much that are just kind of blowing our construction amounts out of the water. So leaning on that 150 years may not be the most ideal in terms of accuracy. However, anyway, you can communicate a long time. We do need to work on kind of updating, but we've just been, there's been so many things in flux with the construction estimates and things like that we're learning through our PedBike strategic program, kind of getting a better, more realistic understanding of what it would take to complete the network. That's one of the reasons why, this is just an aside, one of the reasons why we're focused on kind of priority corridors for our key performance measure, because we'll be able to kind of narrow the scope of completing, like how much it will take to complete that explicit network opposed to kind of the statewide network as a whole, because there's so many unknown factors in there.
Thanks. So it sounds like we don't have super accurate for right now, but I think we could say at funding levels prior to IIJA, which is around the time period that was calculated, it would take, maybe instead of will take. I'll keep it in there. You know, I've been talking a lot, so I want to open it up to other committee members to share any thoughts on this. Andre.
Sorry, mute button. First want to say thank you so much, Aaron, for putting that together. I did want to just share some personal perspective because I was working very closely with advocacy organizations on sort of the other side of the IIJA, and just wanted to sort of go on record sharing that perspective just for context. So one fairly universal view was that within the transportation advocacy organizations was that the final funding went far too much to highway infrastructure. Yes, we got 90 million in the end, but folks that I was working with felt like that was far from what it should have been. And then another point that I wanted to make, and was potentially the most frustrating of that entire process, was the ADA funding. There's nothing wrong inherently at all about giving money for ADA. Totally support and believe that. However, OTC and ODOT said that the funds were flexible, but actually pre-allocated the ADA funds and said that they could not be moved anywhere else at the very beginning of the process. And so I think that was very deceptive and something that I called out multiple times throughout that process. And so just want to get that out on record. And I am super excited about the programs that did emerge, super excited about the work Karen's doing with IMP. And so just appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you for voicing that, Andre. I think that's a really important point. And I guess I have a question to the group based on that and previous OBPAC discussions. You know, is there anything in this letter that we want to shift to both have this be positive reinforcement and say, great, you took a step in the right direction by putting more funding to bike and ped, and yet we have so far to go. This is really falling short of where we'd love to see it. Thoughts on that topic of how we want to frame kind of the overall tone, or any adjustments to articulate there's more work to be done.
My 2 cents is that I didn't sense that when I read the letter a week ago, that it was anything more than a thank you letter. So maybe might pump up the there's more to go part of the letter.
I see people taking a moment to read, so go ahead and keep reading and kind of think on that piece. I'd like to hear from a few more committee members. Beth voiced her perspective on this. I have a couple of thoughts, but I really want to hear kind of as a committee where we're at. Lauren?
Well, hearing Andre, one of those people, when I draft a letter, it takes me like forever. I always want to get the wording just right. So it's like, I almost don't want to say, yeah, let's just redraft this in this meeting right now. But hearing him makes me want to just be more general in the thank you, in our, gratitude for the funds. And like Beth said, it's, just, this is good for now. We appreciate what you're doing now. But like this last sentence that you were going to change anyhow, if the first paragraph, this is outreach, showed that there is broad support across the state. Maybe there's not enough support across the state, for some of the things that they've, helped us with or paid for us. We do still have a ways to go. There's more that we can do. Because we don't want them, I guess my feeling is that we don't want to say that this is good enough. We want them to still hear our voice that we need more. We're grateful, but we need more. Especially if it's disproportionate to, highway funding and vehicles or, buses and things like that.
I think I'm hearing from both Beth and Lauren that we want to say thank you, which the letter does, but maybe integrating a little bit more on this addresses a portion of it. There's more work to be done. We could weave in a couple of those statements where the overall letter still emphasizes thank you for these funding amounts and there's more. I'm looking around, looking for some kind of head nods of going in that direction of adding a few more pieces to acknowledge we're still falling short. While we're grateful, but there's more.
I also meant to say, Erin, you did an amazing job. You did a great job on this letter.
Yes, thank you. You pulled so much specific content in, which there's no way we can do that in a meeting. So really appreciate your work on that.
Yeah, I could definitely maybe meet with Andre and maybe add in some of those components where we see that there could be more improvement. I know Emma also mentioned that we could also discuss how some of other programs didn't get additional funding, like Community Paths program. So I would suggest maybe leaving the thank you part, but maybe adding a little more in that last paragraph of kind of where we have to go in the future.
That sounds good. Do we want to still approve this? Is there a urgency for today, or do you want to have a working group between now and our next meeting and approve it at our next meeting?
When are those funds supposed to be available?
I think they're continuing to kind of go through the process and start to be dispersed. So it's just a matter of if we wait, I think it's longer after the fact, after the OTC decision, which has already been several months. So 2 more months, does that hurt, or is it more beneficial to take the time? An alternative would be to just add in a couple pieces right here in the meeting with, a portion and a sentence in the last paragraph.
We could always approve it with those additional edits, and then I could send the draft out for everyone's just approval over email with the go ahead to send it to OTC. If that's also an option.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we're following our public meetings rules, because I don't like it when public committees make decisions by email. That's one of the concerns we have regarding another committee we just commented on. Won't name it right now. Sorry, who was that? Lauren?
Yeah, I just wanted, I mean, you made the comment that, you know, if we wait, you know, we don't, you made some comment about it hurting us if we wait. In what way?
It's just further delayed in time from the point that they made their decision. So it's communication, maybe, would it be 6 months after their action versus 4 months roughly? I don't, maybe Andre, do you remember when they took action?
I think they voted in May.
Okay, June, July. So this would be about 2 months later. It would be kind of double the time, 4 months later if we waited a couple more months.
It could have been March too. I get May and March mixed up, but yeah, I think that's the question. I mean, we're not necessarily asking for anything in this letter either. And so nothing we're doing is really time specific. It's not like this. I don't believe that the letter is going to immediately make them say, oh, well, we misallocated. So let's like, let's put more money towards public transport or, you know, biking and walking and take it. So I think through that as well as what I'll offer to the group is. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change any OTC decisions in the next couple months here. So with that, I'm recognizing that we are running behind on time now. We've been good on time up until now. I would suggest that you have a working group. So it sounds like Aaron, Andre, would you be willing to meet with Aaron? Anyone else want to be part of that group to do the final drafting, editing for this letter, bring it back to us at the September meeting for full committee approval? Okay, we've got the power team of Aaron and Andre. It'll be simple to schedule since it's just 2 of you. Thank you so much for your work on this. And thanks, Andre, for speaking up and providing that kind of counterpoint too. It's great to say thank you, and let's also make sure that we're continuing with the bigger picture work and vision.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then Susan just chimed in saying that some of the IIJA funds will be available for programs now, and some are dedicated to the next statewide transportation improvement program STIP for the 2024-2027 time period. Next item is organizational health and outreach. First item on this is the chair position. So we are currently without a permanent chair. Planning to host an election in September, but wanted to just briefly go around and ask everyone kind of whether you're a yes, interested in leadership for the committee, maybe interested, or no. Another piece to consider, we've had the chair and vice chair structure, but we could change it if we decided to change our bylaws. We could have a co-chair situation where we have 2 individuals who are more kind of equally sharing that role, that could facilitate maybe alternating facilitators one meeting to the next. I personally would be kind of in favor of that structure. I think it's a good one to provide leadership opportunity, but kind of more equally share the role and the power. So let's go around. I'm just going to call on each of you individually, and if you can share where you're at with a yes, maybe, or a no, that would be wonderful to help inform the decision that we'll be making at our next meeting. So starting with Bill.
I think the chair, co-chair model is a good one, especially with such a small group. And I would support that.
Do you have interest in being in one of those positions?
Yes, of course I have interest, but I worry about my health with the Parkinson's disease progressing. I am reluctant to put myself in a more difficult position.
Great, thank you for sharing where you're at. Next, we'll go just around my screen. So Aaron is next.
I really like the co-chair idea, just kind of lifts the burden off just one person and kind of spreads it out a little more evenly. And I would say maybe on serving as chair, just because I'm going into my last year at OSU. But I have been actively removing things from my plate. So I would have the capacity, especially if there was going to be a co-chair situation. So maybe for me.
Great, thank you. Beth, you're next on my screen. That looks like a hard no.
No, no, thank you.
Okay, Andre,
No, thank you.
Lauren,
I like the co-chair idea as well, but I would be happy to be the one. And no, I'm running for tribal council right now. So got a lot on my plate.
well, thank you for serving and running for that in that capacity. And Robert,
Wow, you said you're running for tribal council, Lauren? That's really exciting. I didn't realize that. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't vote in that election, but if I could, you'd have my vote.
Well, if you know people in my tribe, you can campaign
Yeah.
for me.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if I know anyone in your tribe. So I'm gonna be resigning. My last meeting will be the September in-person meeting. I've shared this with some of you, but definitely not all of you, and I've kind of alluded to it. I think it's been a long time coming for me. So needless to say, I don't have any interest in co-chair, but I think that would be a great model.
thank you. Appreciate that. And we're gonna miss you, Robert, but glad that you're gonna join us for our next meeting. Be part of some important conversations. And in the meantime, you've supported, like you said earlier, getting great committee members to join and helping with some of the transition that we're going through as a committee. So thank you. So with that, it looks like Erin is willing. We're gonna check in with Mavis since she's not here today. She has been vice chair in the past, has served in leadership capacity on OBPAC. I would be interested in continuing in some capacity. I like the co-chair structure, and I was hearing a lot of support for that. So I'm gonna suggest that we bring forward to our next meeting a change to the bylaws to change it from chair and vice chair to co-chair, and then have an election to choose who our two co-chairs will be. Thank you for that. ACT workshop summary. I'm not sure if this is Erin or Lauren who would like to provide a little summary of the Area Commission on Transportation workshop kind of gathering that we did with the bike ped transit oriented representatives from those acts across the state.
I feel like we already did that.
Yeah, I think we did that at the May meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is probably just a carryover and juggling the agendas and revisions. I think we had a kind of next step of where we at for the local committee engagement. I guess I want to gauge interest in taking action on that in the next couple of months here with a work group meeting, or what our desire for timing of that is. We're going to be updating our work program at the next meeting, but I think this is an item that I'm hearing a lot of support for, kind of mobilizing across the state, doing that networking, doing the outreach. How can we support as well as be supported by the local committees? Erin and Lauren and I are on the work group. We also welcome other members. What do the two of you want to discuss on this item right here and now, or should we just do a doodle to set a work group date and take it offline for bringing something forward to the full committee in September?
I think we need a work group. Beth, this might be something we would be interested in too, since you're out there rurally. And it's fun.
Are you talking about the ACT workshop or the local BPAC?
The next phase of outreach to the local BPACs or active transportation committees. Like what you were talking about, where you have a connection to your City of Newport committee, and how can there be more interconnectedness across the state?
So I'd be interested in items 3 and 4.
Great. Would you like to come to the next work group meeting?
Sure.
And Andre, are you interested?
Generally, I think I would just want to sort of get a better idea of what the commitment entails.
This would be doing one meeting between now and our September meeting to kind of map out what are the next steps for the outreach to the local committees. And so would you like to be involved in that doodle and the meeting?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for asking a clarifying question of what am I signing up for? Susan, I'm wondering if there is or if other committee members know if there's a limit on the number of OBPAC members who can be in a work group.
Before you get to a quorum or trigger public records
Yeah.
laws. I'll have to look it up real quick. I'll
Okay.
do an aside and then put it in the
Thank
chat.
you. If there is, I'd be happy to step down from it myself, or we can address that. That brings us to the end of committee business. Do we have the ODOT staff here? We have Susan. Kaz has joined us, wonderful. And Erica is also here. Perfect. We have the ODOT staff here for our next agenda item, ODOT updates.
I was just gonna do a quick, thank you everyone for your flexibility. We had some unforeseen circumstances that required us to transition the meeting to virtual instead of in person. I know that's disappointing. I'm especially grateful right now because I ended up getting sick also, and so I wouldn't have been able to attend to get you guys sick. So thanks for the flexibility. I'm going to kick it over to Kaz to provide those staffing updates and some programmatic updates from the IIJA decision. And then we have somebody here, Erica, who's our new director for the Office of Social Equity, who will introduce herself as well. And then we're really excited about that. And then we, Karen always has the prerogative to kind of add in pieces as well. So thanks. We'll try to keep it short, but Kaz.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to be as quick as possible because I want to give Erica as much time and space to have a conversation with you here today. I'm going to attempt to screen share and show you, first of all, the positions that we secured through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act application we made to the Legislative Emergency Board. We're, I think, on 7 positions here. We also have another position which we're kind of sharing with tolling, but that's coming forward next year. So I'll talk you through these very quickly, and then I think everything else, Madam Interim Chair, sorry, it's quite a mouthful. Madam Interim Chair, with your permission, if I could reach out to members individually to talk about the Innovative Mobility Program and Great Streets as well, because it's not a conversation you can start and then stop. So I'll just do these positions and then I'll hand over to Erica. So we went for 7 positions. We got all of them, which is really cool. And we're really focused on trying to support existing staff and extend the reach of what we're able to do. So the positions we went for: equitable engagement coordinator, I think that speaks for itself. But the idea there is really to act as a single point of contact. So when we're engaging community groups, folks get to know a single person, and we're not, as a division, engaging people, the same people through different channels. That's always, a real waste of our effort and really takes up time when it comes to community organizations and others. It's just not an efficient way to do things. That said, we know that we do need to be engaging more effectively.
And just breathe.
Frozen, so maybe I'll pick up until he unfreezes. Andre, this seems familiar, does it? So Great Streets the program manager, The third position is the Public Transportation Climate Specialist. And the main thrust of this position is working with transit providers across the state to transition the state-owned public transportation fleet. So those are the vehicles that the state has purchased and has placed with transit providers across the state. So those are primarily in rural and suburban areas. So that's over 1,000 vehicles that the state holds title to. Oh no, the presentation went down. Now I'm going to play from memory. We have this could get interesting. We have the Innovative Mobility Program Manager position. And then there is also an Innovative Mobility Program Coordinator position. Yay, things are in the chat, hurrah. Emma, you're on it, thank you. We also have a micromobility and not fire. It's not a fire coordinator. It's a first.
Thanks for
program coordinator, that's okay. And so that is another transportation options position. That micromobility and first and last mile is also going to be focused on supporting businesses and local communities in implementing the eco rule. And then we have, what am I forgetting? The statewide intercity public transportation coordinator position, which the thrust of that position is we are getting increasing federal funds for intercity public transportation. So, and we want to make sure that we're taking the information that is in our statewide network report and then layering that with what we know about our multimodal network, and then identifying areas where either we have gaps, whether they're spatial gaps like physical gaps, or whether we have areas where the schedules between two transit providers don't line up, or we have areas where we have service, but we actually really need more service, and trying to figure out strategically where should we be focusing our efforts and working primarily with the local transit providers to see where we could fill those gaps. I think, was that 7?
We've got the tolling, so that's 6. I'm trying to think.
No,
of this.
tolling's, tolling's next time. Okay.
Okay.
I'll pop it in the chat if I think of what, if I'm missing one and I think of that. And then I think to Kaz's earlier point, part of what he's doing is he and our team are doing a lot of outreach and engagement right now related to the IMP program. We're also doing a lot of work to try to figure out what a request for information looks like, what our different procurement options are, and which procurement option to apply under what set of circumstances to make sure that CBOs, community-based organizations, are able to effectively do that work and help support that program and really help us with both, I think in some ways, our trust deficit, but also with starting to reach more deeply and build those direct relationships with communities that we most want to prioritize for innovative mobility solutions, but that we also, I will say, as an agency, generally have the least experience in reaching and having conversations with those communities. And so I think his interest in having one-on-ones with you is seeing that each of you have specific interests and networks and just things that he wants to run past you as we're continuing to learn more through the process. And with that, I'm going to stop and pause and kick it over to Erica McAlpin. And unless there are any questions for me. And Erica, I'm super happy that she's here. She had done some contracting work for ODOT previous to being the successful candidate in a very competitive pool of applicants. And with that, I will turn it over to her to do her self-introductions and tell us a bit about her vision and what for the office and what she might be able to bring to bear on this committee's work.
Thank you, Karen. So I'm Erica McAlpin. I am the Assistant Director for the Office of Social Equity here at ODOT. And just to give you a little background, I come to ODOT from Oregon State University, where I was a professor in business management, as well as running the DEI laboratory, which is where I did consulting work, and how I became a consultant for ODOT. So I have about a 10-year career in academia, and then about 12 years in industry prior to that. So I bring a wealth of experience in doing DEI work in various industries around the state of Oregon. And when Karen and Cass talked to me about working with you all, or engaging you in a conversation around equity, I'm so excited to be able to do that. Part of my vision for the office is to engage our community stakeholders and committees that work with ODOT on various projects and topics. And so however you want to engage with the Office of Social Equity, please know that we are here and we are ready to engage with you. I understand that there are some concerns around equity. And if you want, I'll just leave it open to ask me any questions that you might have, and I can give you a rundown on how I think I can help.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us today, Erica. It's great to meet you. I know that our committee was trying to meet with the different directors over time, and there was a transition gap. So I'm really glad that you're hired, that you're coming forward, just introducing yourself today, and that you'll be continuing to work with us in a kind of more involved agenda item at our September meeting.
Yes.
Any initial questions or things that committee members would like to share with Erica since she's here today? I guess, what are your preferred pronouns? I just made the assumption that it was she.
She, her.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Great. Well, we're a little bit behind on schedule, so I just appreciate you being here, and we'll be talking a whole lot more at our next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Great. That brings us to the member roundtable, not on agenda items. So this is where we do any follow-up that we wish to on the public comment, as well as talk about updates and agenda requests for our next meeting. This will kind of dovetail straight into talking about the September meeting, and I want to talk about scheduling and a couple items there. But first, any thoughts, follow-ups on the public comment that we received about the Corvallis bridge situation? Andre.
I just had a question about how if comment like that is common, and if so, do we have a established methodology for sort of further communication or strategizing to support an outcome if we like it, or yeah.
Yeah, great question. It sometimes depends on the project. Usually we'd ask ODOT, and so I'm wondering if Susan has any information or Karen has information to share about the latest status on this project. Sometimes there are moments when it's appropriate for OBPAC to engage based on a role, in other situations where it's more at a local level, like a commission in a certain county is making a decision. ODOT might be engaging in some respect, but it's really not our purview to engage. So we've received comment on this before, and I'm not remembering specifically what my notes on it were at that time. So staff, please support.
This has been an ongoing one. The last time I touched it was probably in the 2019 range or so. So it's been quite an issue. And the way that I touched it was just a look at what are the potential funding opportunities for this bridge and this project. Generally, when people come, as Emma said, with specific inquiries or requests for support from the committee, we can put together kind of information. We can ask region staff on the current status of the project, and if there's any specific decisions that are coming up as well, for the committee to know about. So I can go back to region 2 and get an update on what's going on with the project specifically.
I think that would be helpful to just know kind of generally where it's at, a little bit more context and status update on that.
I would think we would want to, and I don't know what you've done in the past, but seeing a letter that we can endorse or not. I mean, it's just way too broad to endorse something that we don't have all the information on. We can maybe be a co-signatory or something like that in a letter, but we need to know what we're putting our name on.
Madam Chair, if I could offer a bit of additional information too. I didn't hear the public comment. I was held up in another meeting, but ODOT has an anticipation of more requests for project funding, and depending on what the letter is for, we have a process in place now related to if it's will ODOT sign on to a letter of support, or who is the appropriate part of ODOT to review and consider and sign on to a report or onto a letter of support. And so if it's that kind of request, that's something that we can work through our process, which literally off the top of my head, I don't recall the specific details, because there's, as all most things with ODOT, there's nuance depending on what pot of funding they're asking, they're applying for funds for. But if this was more of a general, like, will you support improvements in this area? I think Susan's suggestion of just getting more information from region staff about the status of improvements in that area, and then the committee can decide what, if anything, they want to do next based on that, is probably a good way to go on this one.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, it's about the bridge, the Van Buren Bridge in Corvallis, and the request to slide it to the side, make it a bike ped bridge to access the parks adjacent. I know that we've received written materials on this before, so I will try to look back to which meeting that was and send that out so that you can look at that written comment. And I'm going to look at that again. I think having staff ask the region staff for a brief status update and kind of what's going on with it would be helpful. And then it sounds as if Lynn has provided written comments that due to the staffing situation leading up to this meeting, we just didn't get those in advance of today's meeting. So those will be dispersed as soon as possible as well. I imagine there will be overlap between what she has submitted now and what we received as a committee previously. So we'll do a little bit more information gathering. It is important to recognize that I think, OBPAC has a certain statewide role, and if we choose our own volition to take on a lot of individual location-based project items, that could take up a lot of our time and capacity, and we might lose sight of some of the bigger work plan goals that we have to accomplish, shifting bigger power dynamics and affecting the policy and funding changes that we want at the higher level across the state. So just something to keep in mind as we discuss work program update next time.
And I think we also try to work together to be pretty intentional about what's sort of in scope and out of scope related to OBPAC's charter, which it can be really difficult sometimes because it is a pretty broad range of things that you could be giving us input on. Which is why the work plan is so important. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, thank you for that. Member updates and agenda requests. Let's go there next, and then we'll discuss a little bit more detail about the September meeting. So any general updates that pertain to walking and biking? Robert's already shared that he plans to resign after the September meeting. We'll have a new vacancy to fill, and it would probably be beneficial looking to staff, even though they're not on the screen right now, to start that process. So hopefully as soon as Robert's off, we have someone already queued up and ready to take his position, so there's not a gap.
Yeah, I guess I should mention that since I am the Recreation Trails representative, it's a position that has to be, the person who fills it needs to be, the candidate needs to be recommended to the governor's office by ORTAC, the Oregon Recreation Trails Advisory Council. So that puts a little bit of a wrinkle into it. But I know that Jessica, she knew that I was planning to resign, so she already reached out to the person at State Parks who staffs ORTAC. So that ball is already rolling.
Do you know if OBPAC has any role in the process, or is it fully an ORTAC process?
I'm not sure, because last time that process happened, predated me and it also predated Jessica. It was the Sheila Lyons era. I guess, does that mean I'm the last? Well, Susan was around then.
I was here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you-
no, it just came as a recommendation to OBPAC. So
Okay.
there wasn't an OBPAC role in it.
Great. So maybe it's a follow-up to let them know the specific timing and ask them to get moving on that in the next couple months here. Beth?
Robert, if you don't have to say names, but if you have any ideas of who in your world would be great for this, please talk them into it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of solid candidates. I know of a few people, definitely. Not to worry.
Well, and I think to OBPAC's charter and to the recruitment and selection process that you all participated in and that we have in place in HB, I'm going to get it wrong, 2935, making sure our committees are representative of the communities that we're serving across Oregon. I think it'll be very important for us to be able to cast a broad net and make sure that we're being inclusive and fully considering all potential candidates. So I look forward to seeing what we come up with. And Robert, we will miss you. I think I heard rumblings that you were potentially leaving us. I just didn't know the timing. So jump on the opportunity to say thank you so much for all of your years of service to ODOT and this committee and this division also. Thank you.
That's nice of you. I will be here at the next meeting. That'll be my last meeting, but thanks for those kind words, Karen.
I can say it again then too. We will have all forgotten, at least I will have forgotten that I said it by then.
So far for the September meeting, we have the kind of equity discussion, reflecting on our committee establishing an operating agreement, that whole thing with some support from the Office of Social Equity, Erica, who was just speaking with us. We have work plan items, including the finalization of the IIJA OTC thank you letter that Erin and Andre are going to work on. We have the change to our bylaws to make it a co-chair structure and the election of those two co-chair positions. And we may have other items as well. So we've already got a pretty full agenda, but are there any things that folks would like to see on our future agenda, either September or soon after? And I'm seeing Karen has something in mind, and then we'll go to Robert.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert, first, and then I'll take a
Oh, are you sure you can go first?
Okay. So just I've been getting some details on it, but just today I was hearing more from the Office of Social Equity, and they are working on starting to do an equity review of all of ODOT's policies. I'm still coming to understand what is in and out of scope for that kind of review. Related to that, they are also doing some policy work around our engagement policies and equitable engagement and sort of committee best practices. And I think there will be some outreach to all of the staff to committees, but also chairs and co-chairs to the committees to talk with folks about what that means. I don't have the exact timing yet of when that's going to roll out, but I know that that is a value this committee holds. It's a value our division holds very strongly. And I offered both, SRAC as well as this committee and the work of this committee as examples. If there's things that this committee is doing and doing well, that's a best practice that you might want to share. We're not perfect. We're still learning and improving. And so I think we're going to look forward to getting that policy information and that guidance and really seeing that. I'm going to be seeing that level of the level rise and continue to rise and how we do that kind of work as an agency. So I just wanted to, I don't know that it's necessarily an agenda item for you next month, but I thought it was worth sharing. And I know we will have Erica joining us next month to help those conversations. So some of it might bubble in through that. So just more of a FYI.
Okay, thanks for that. Robert may be going there, but I know I want to hear the lunch and learn content that he was scheduled to provide to us today. Is that what you're gonna bring up?
That was all I was gonna say. Yeah, if any of you looked at the old agenda for when this was supposed to be an in-person meeting, Susan and I were scheduled to give a presentation on the study tour that we both had the good fortune to be able to attend. We were in Denmark for 2 weeks looking at all sorts of urban and interurban transportation, the wonders of how it works in Denmark. It's really inspirational and amazing. So I know that I'm really excited, and I'm sure Susan is too, to share some of that with you at the next meeting.
I definitely want to hear it. So our current plan would be to have the OBPAC meeting be 1 to 4 p.m. virtual, because we had planned to be in person for today and tomorrow. Given that we canceled our in-person meeting, I'd like to ask all of you if we could make the September meeting a 2-day meeting. You can pull up your calendars briefly, look at September 26th and September 28th, because our OBPAC meeting is scheduled for the afternoon of the 27th. Are any of those dates, the 26th through the 28th of September, a complete no-go for anyone?
I have something on the 27th that I'll have to miss, but is there any chance of scooting it over one day?
Like, do we the 28th, 29th?
Yeah. That works better for me? Or to Monday, Tuesday?
Well,
Wait.
26th, 27th would be an option, but if the 27th is out for you,
It's not out. I just won't go.
okay. We also might be able to do like a tour that you'd miss on Tuesday, but do the bulk of our meeting on Monday.
Forget it. It's fine.
Okay, thanks for being flexible. Any other issues? Are we available? So it'd be afternoon meeting with the morning for travel on Monday, and then meeting on Tuesday, the 27th. Does that work? Seeing Robert might have a thumb over to the side. There we go. Bill, does that work for you? 26th, 27th of September? You're muted. Sorry, what did you say, Bill? You're muted. I can't hear you.
I have a conflict, but I think I could make the meeting.
Okay. Is that conflict on which date?
The 27th.
Okay, so regardless, we'd probably be meeting on that day anyway. So thank you for your flexibility and commitment to the state committee. With that, let's plan to have the 2-day meeting. I'm going to recommend Portland because I think that's easiest for ODOT staff. That's also where a few of you are. That's where we're planning to meet this time. Any concerns about Portland for this one, and then aiming for the talent kind of Southern Oregon in the spring as our next in-person meeting? If that works. Okay.
Question
Oh, yeah,
before
yeah.
you go on. Will the
Fine.
27th be done by noon? Whatever we're doing on the 27th?
Would be, I think. I'm not
Oh.
sure. We haven't planned it out. I'm just trying to figure out availability. So is that your preference to be done by noon on the 27th?
Wasn't that what we're gonna do, like afternoon the first day and morning the second day?
I think so. Yeah, and be done by about midday.
That'll be great for me. If it's not exactly noon, that's okay.
Okay. And then Aaron, did you have something?
Yeah, really quick, as far as like next meeting, I know there was a lot of support for the co-chair structure. Did you want me to have like a draft ready for our bylaws, or would that be something we do after the meeting?
That would be amazing if you take the lead on that. I would so appreciate that support.
Okay, yeah, I'll have a draft ready, just changing the language a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, wonderful meeting today. Our next meeting will be in person in Portland, September 26th through 27th. And we have a number of great follow-up items to be productive between now and then, set up for a good meeting in September. Really appreciate everyone's flexibility again to adjust and still keep today's meeting virtual. I think we got a lot of value by coming together today, identifying some next steps on how to support new members and move things forward. So with that, I am going to say that this meeting of the OBPAC July 2022 meeting is adjourned. Bye, everyone. Thank
you all
you.
so much. Bye.
Thank you all.